It's the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network. Recorded from Detroit, Michigan, and Jacksonville, Florida. The Infectious Groove Podcast is your source for jammy jams, album reviews, and the best in-depth music discussion. Thanks for joining us. Now here are your hosts.
Hello, my name is Russ. I am part of the Infectious Groove Podcast crew here, and this week we have quite a few exciting things to share with everybody, not the least of which is something that I've really talked about on social media lately, but I want to make sure to mention this out of the gate because oftentimes I find as soon as I'm done recording for the night, I remember the things that I wanted to mention for sure on the show. Out of the gate, I want to say, first of all, that we recently got over 100,000 views on our YouTube channel, which is something we're very proud of. But actually, as of yesterday, we made it over 1,700 subscribers, which is awesome for us. Like, you know, we're doing our best to put out as much content as we hope people like, and it would appear that people do, which is awesome. So thank you for that. In addition, the other thing I want to mention, and I've posted about this on social media about 3,000 times in the last week. So in case you missed one of those 3,000 posts, we do have a bunch of new merch that goes in line with our new logos and everything, banners and everything that's on all of our social media. So if you go to TeePublic and just look for Infectious Groove Podcast, you will find all of that merch on there. You can buy something and help the show out. Astute listeners of the show will notice that I did not stop to introduce Kyle or Michelle this week on the episode. We've been doing this show where every other week, either Kyle or Michelle are here with us. Going forward, we are going to do the thing where Michelle is with us every other week, but Kyle is taking a short leave, hopefully short leave from the show. Fear not, though. This week on the show, I do have a member of the podcast community pinch hitting and helping us out, as I have gone on in detail about how blessed we are to have a lot of great friends. And you have heard this person's name on the podcast a great deal. You have heard the name of their podcast a great deal, but you have yet to hear their voice on our show. And that is longtime supporter and podcaster in his own right, Dayton from the Docking Bay 77 podcast, joins us this week. First of all, thanks for coming on the show, brother. And second of all, go ahead and tell everybody who you are, where to find you, and what they're going to listen to if they listen to your show.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. Well, the basic of the podcast is we like to talk about movies. We talk about music. I am the host and I have a lot of great friends that like to be a part of it. Every month we do at least a top 7 countdown, a music episode, a movie centric episode, and then we also do a versus episode. And a lot of us are movie nerds. I have former bandmates in on the music episodes. And, it's just great fun having hour and a half talking about things we love, sometimes things we don't like so much. And we have good fun and make fun of each other. And it's just a blast. And we are streaming everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It's kind of cool. I looked it up on Audible. I looked it up on iHeartRadio. I'm like, hey, there we are. So it's always a nice feeling.
Isn't that cool when you find your stuff out there? You're like, look, that's me.
Yeah, somebody asked me if I was on Audible. I said, you know what? I'm not sure. And I looked and yes, there I was.
Right on. And I'll tell you one of the things too, in case anybody was wondering the kind of taste that they have on their show. I was most excited recently when you covered one of my favorite movies of all time, not just the 90s, but LA Confidential.
Oh,
yeah. And yes. I don't want to derail my own show right off the bat and then redo your own episode, but my God, what a motion picture that is.
I know it's a perfect movie. It is perfect. I love that movie. Like I said on the episode, I have the movie poster. I have a copy of the script. Saw it in theater, and every time I watch it, it's just gives me all the feels. It's a perfect movie.
I'm exactly the same way. And when I listened to your episode, the way you started it with the opening monologue, it was literally like as it was happening, I was like, I'm going to have to go watch this movie again.
That was the intention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely love that. So anyways, you have heard Dayton's name on this show before because he has been kind enough to help out the program. You have heard about his podcast, the Docking Bay Podcast, on our show before, and now you get a chance to hear his voice and a little bit of what you'll hear. So as with any podcast, if you just go Google Docking Bay 77 Podcast, you're going to find his podcast on whatever platform you use. So go ahead and drop them a subscription as a small thank you to us for being a listener of ours and for them coming to help us out. As far as this episode goes, we have a good one here. The main topic for this episode in the second half is going to be an album review. For those of you familiar with our album review rotation, we generally go through picks that each of the hosts get to make. Then we stop off and have the crowd give us a pick. And this time we are going to review an album by the Arcade Fire called The Suburbs. That was given to us by a listener of the show, and I will revisit that when we get into the second half. One thing that at least was interesting for me about this, and Dayton, I don't know where you're at on this, prior to listening to this record for this review, I had not heard one note of music from the Arcade Fire.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I knew of the band, but I'd never listened to them.
Yeah, I'll get into it later too. Like, not only did I know of them, but they're in a SNL sketch that I love. Like, the band is in an SNL sketch. Yeah, but for whatever reason, I had just never heard the band. So that's awesome too for you too, because we're both experienced in the ways of music, and for both of us to listen to a band we'd heard of, but an album or a band we haven't heard one note from, and then to take this whole record in, I think will be a cool experience for sure. So, having said that, we are going to get into our usual topics and whatnot that we cover. So here we go.
Feedback, Joe.
Don't worry about that. Right. There's rock and roll be without feedback.
First thing we do on every episode is share feedback. And actually, I have to call myself on the carpet because last week I was so excited about our season premiere after the 2 weeks that we took off. And a loyal listener of the show left a voicemail for us shortly after our season 6 finale. I had this voicemail edited, loaded in the Roadcaster, and ready to go for 2 weeks, and then did not hit the play button during the feedback segment, which if you're a listener to the show, sounds like something I would do. So we're going to start with that piece of feedback first, and then we'll go on into all the written feedback we got from social media.
Hey, Infectious Groove Podcast. This is Seth. I'm calling from the Queer Squad Pod. I just wanted to make some comments on your gatekeeping episode of your finale last season. I really enjoyed it. When I think of gatekeeping, I think a lot about the early 2000s when I was going to Warped Tour. And this was like at the rise when like pop punk was really popular. And like you would go there and all of like the older bands or, you know, that were like making it big, everyone would say that they're a sellout. They're sellouts. They're not punk rock or like punk or punk rock anymore. They're sellouts. And that always annoyed the crap out of me because I was like, they're getting success and you're mad at them for doing well because they have good music that people like. I don't know. It just never really made sense to me. And that is like my idea of gatekeeping because that was like one of the most frustrating things ever. And then from that point on, I just always made a point to like, not do that. Also, like when I was in college, one of my professors, I was taking a history of rock class, and he said that he hates when people say, "Oh, this sucks." It doesn't suck. You just don't like it. And so I've also taken that like with me in the future and really tried to like not lambaste anybody for liking whatever they like, even if it's like Creed or whatever. But that being said, I do miss the old Infectious Groove podcast when Michelle and Kyle were on it. So, I used to listen to it back then. So I just wanted that to be known. All right, you all have a good season premiere, and I can't wait to see what else the season has in store for us. All right, bye. Hope you all have a good one.
So that is great feedback from Seth, and I like the part at the end about how he's such a hipster. He used to listen to the original Infectious Groove podcast when it was Russ, Kyle, and Michelle, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, man, he makes a lot of good points there, like the for sure about going to those music festivals and here, they sold out, it's
right.
Like, what do you want from your band, man? You either want them to be successful and keep making product or, like music for you to enjoy or not.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And that point too, that was hard for me to learn. And we covered it in the episodes we've done about like being a music snob and all that stuff. Like I used to be that guy that was just like, well, if I don't like it, it sucks. No, it's just that you don't like it as all.
Yeah. I used to be very much like that too. I remember going to see Metallica during the Black Album tour. And they got so popular so quick that I actually had to buy tickets for the lawn because all the pavilion was sold out. So I spent the whole time being very mad at all these people at the show, and then I'm like, well, I shouldn't be like that. It took me a long time to get over it, but yeah, that's a bitter pill to swallow when you're young.
yeah, for sure when you're younger. And then Seth did mention, and I have to say, the only band that I'm always about that like, and it's more of a running joke than anything, but no, Creed is not good. I don't care what I will never grow out of disliking Creed. So anyway, Seth, sorry about missing your voicemail last week, but it was very good voicemail. We always appreciate that. We wanted to make sure to include it. Next up, we have the Ever Trending Story podcast writes in regarding our season premiere and says, the crew is back. This was such a great episode. Michelle was at the top of her game and brought up some very well articulated thoughts. Russ was great as always. I learned so much about that song, and I can't wait to check out each version. Welcome back. We have quite a bit of feedback coming in regarding that song. We'll get to that in a second. Aaron writes in and says, I totally agree on the Gautier album. That is an album that way too many people sleep on. And that is going back to our Jammy Jams last week when I discussed the album Making Mirrors by Gautier and how that's such a better record than just that one hit. So right. I like that Aaron chimed in on that. Dave writes in, Dave from the Beer in Front podcast, and says, I played the original Bob Dylan version of Make You Feel My Love at our reception. My mother was not happy that I chose that over Adele, which that story checks out.
Yeah.
Lauren, of course, we know Lauren very well from the Beard Owl podcast. She writes in and says, 2 bits of feedback. From the moment that I knew you were doing this cover battle, I was secretly mad at you for not including Billy Joel in Proper. I guess I understand why, but I will forever be salty about it. The instrumentation on Billy's knocks the other 2 covers out of the park anyways. And then conversely, our friend Neil from Twitter writes in and says, I'm going to listen to this podcast right now, but I'm staying hopeful that you didn't mention Billy Joel's cover. I adore Billy, always have, always will, and I'd listen to Billy fart lullaby in every second of it, but his cover of To Make You Feel My Love is not on my Desert Island compilations.
Oh,
so good. What now? I know you had some thoughts on this. What are your thoughts, Dayton?
Yeah, well, it was actually kind of funny because 2 days prior to your episode dropping, I was having a conversation with a friend who had purchased a Garth Brooks vinyl collection, specifically looking for a certain song. He couldn't remember the name of it. He couldn't find it on there, and he was trying to tell the story. And all of a sudden, my wife pops up, and it was like, "Oh, To Make You Feel My Love." And he's like, "Yeah, that's it."
Yep.
And knew that it was Dylan that wrote it, and she knew it was Billy Joel, and then Adele and Garth Brooks. And so 2 days later, I show her, "Hey, look, what's on the episode?" And she goes, "Where's Billy Joel's episode? Or where's Billy Joel's version?" I'm sorry, I didn't pick it, but I will say I'm in favor of Adele's version. Her voice makes that song.
She does, and it's, to me, it's what you're in it for. Like if you're in that song for the heartbreak of it, then she's got the heartbreak aspect of that song on lockdown.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alex, a listener of the show, writes in and says, who's this new indie artist, Bob Dylan? And he says, also, Modern Times is a great Bob Dylan late entry into his catalog, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. That's fantastic. A couple of other pieces of feedback I want to share real quick. This is kind of an inside thing from last week's episode regarding, we had a moment where Michelle wasn't sure if you should say Garth Brooks or Garth Brookses or what the plural of Garth Brooks is. And I said, I have that issue with my own name because I never know if it's supposed to be RUSS' or whatever. Our friend Nick Macchiato, who is formerly Detention on Twitter, writes in and says, the proper placement of the apostrophes in your name is RU''S''S and then 7 apostrophes, which that's how, that's how I'm going to use it from now on.
All right. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. That's how I'm going to write it. Lastly, this one's kind of wordy, but to be honest, this is some of the best feedback we've received in general in quite some time. So I do want to read this. This is coming from our friend JT, who used infectiousgroovepodcast.com to write us this note that says, I just want to say how amazing your show is. It's so difficult to find a fun-loving, serious, but not too serious show about music where all opinions are welcome, except Creed being good, of course. He wrote that, not me. That's not editorial. That's in the note. He says, I would also add Nickelback in there myself. I don't have a problem with Nickelback personally, but I get it.
I don't either.
Yeah. Truly in-depth conversation. The Jammy Jams are my favorites, but the topics you all choose are fresh and new. Gatekeeping was one of my favorites. It's something that I think about when someone says, oh, you can't like Metallica because of Stranger Things. But why not, right? Sure you can. And while you're at it, listen to these other songs from them as well. You like those? Check out these bands too. My kiddos love the intro to Phineas and Ferb. And I said, you know who that is? That's Bowling for Soup. Do you want to listen to other couple songs by them? So we did. Then we moved to other bands like Patent Pending and more. It was a wonderful way to pull the kiddos in and the adults too, I guess. Sorry for the long message, which, by the way, please never, ever apologize for long messages on the show. I'll just keep rambling on for the rest of the day. I hope your day is just as infectious. Come on, I'm a dad. I had to say it, right? Keep up the amazing work, JT. So we really appreciate that feedback. But yeah, it's like you said too, like when you're younger, you spend that time in the lawn going, I should be up in I should be in the snake pit. But like, who cares how we get there as long as we're all there, right?
Yeah, very few of us were the first one to hear a band. Let's be really honest,
I was just, we have an Infectious Groove YouTube group, and I just posted, I don't want to spoil it, it's partially one of my jammy jams, but I just posted a song, and the band in question, me and another guy in the group were going back and forth about how many bands we thought were new when we were young. And I've shared this story on the show before. It's not this band in particular that is one of my jammy jams, but I've shared this on the show before, that when the Fleetwood Mac album Tango in the Night came out, I was so excited to tell my older sister about this new band Fleetwood Mac that I had found. And you're never going to believe this, Dayton, but they were not new. That was Fleetwood.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah, Tango in the It turns out Tango in the Night was not Fleetwood Mac's first record. It wasn't even like the third incarnation of the band.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. I've been there. Just so I thought I found something new. I went to my brother and he goes, no, I've known about them for 10 years. I'm like, okay, fine. Whatever.
Yeah. All right, fine. Let's agree to disagree. I'll say they're new and you say otherwise.
Right. They're new to me. That's all that matters.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Moving right along. Our jammies. Getting into our jammy jams, I will take a step back and let our guests go first. What have you been listening to, Dayton? And as important to me is always why, why it is you've been listening to this. So what have you been up to?
All right. So my first one, I actually have four. My first one, Shinedown released their new record, Planet Zero, and I've been listening to it quite a bit. My favorite track on the album is America Burning. I love the lyrics, and the fact that they use a banjo in the song, which is very American, is actually very inspired. I think it's a great song, and I love it, and it just gets stuck in my head.
Right on.
I had a road trip recently, and so, of course, for my road trip, I always have multiple playlists, and these two I listened to most were a 70s rock playlist and an 80s rock playlist. So the next two come from that. From the 70s one, I have Uneasy Rider from Charlie Daniels. I just adore that song. It's fun. It tells a great story, and it just gets stuck in my head. And as far as, everybody raves about Devil Went Down to Georgia, but to me, this is my favorite Charlie Daniels song. I absolutely adore that one. And also from the 80s playlist was from Suicidal Tendencies, You Can't Bring Me Down. If I'm in a mood, that song is always a great way to get the aggression out and makes me feel better afterwards. Gets in my head. I just adore it. One of their best songs, I think, one of their best tracks. And now this one, I don't know where this one came from. It just got in there a couple of days ago, so I had to mention it. Just like from it got in my head a couple of days ago. Don't know where. Don't remember hearing it on the radio. It's just been in there resting comfortably for a couple of days, and it's a great song. So those are my jammy jams.
A lot of diversity. And just the one I want to touch on real quick, man, is when I first heard of Shinedown, I forget what song it was that I heard first, but like upon immediate listen, we're talking about from their first record, like I could have took or left what I heard. And then when I heard I think is the title track to Sound of Madness, I think that.
Oh, yeah.
So either their first or second record, something like that.
That was their second.
Okay, man.
Oh, wait. Third, actually.
Is it third?
Yeah.
When that kid, I get it. You're I was like, yes, this, sign me up for more of this,
Yes. Yeah, me too. That was the record I got into on them. So yeah, that was, I agree. That track, that's a attention getter for sure.
Yep. For me, I've got some 80s, some 90s, and a little early 2000s stuff. And one of which is the band that I was saying sparked that discussion of when you think a band is new and they're not, was the band Heart when they had their big mid 80s resurgence with really like a pop rock sound for the first time ever. It was a self-titled record, and you can't really blame a lot of people for thinking that Heart was a new band at the time, with like Never and These Dreams and all that. But the one that's been stuck in my head is What About Love?
Right.
It's just such a great power rock song. And this is the one that me and the guy on the Facebook group were talking about where both of us went to older siblings and we're like, have you heard this new band Heart? And older siblings were like, I've heard that band Heart who's been around for 10 years before you knew about it. Yeah.
Right.
So that song, What About Love? And I would argue, I think Never from that album is so underrated from Heart. Like no one ever talks about that song, and it's such a jam. Like it's a great,
it's a good, that whole record was pretty good. It was kind of the beginning of the end of them, but it's still a great record.
Yeah, for sure. The next one up for me is now Bon Jovi is one of those bands that has a ton of solid ballads. And I would argue some get way more attention than others, but maybe I'm on an island on this, but I think it was a huge hit when it came out. Their song Always was a huge ballad when it came out. And then it just like got forgotten. Like no one, if you ask somebody to name 5 or 10 Bon Jovi songs, they're not going to name Always.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah. And it's a great song. Like to me, I always say this about Bon Jovi whenever I'm trying to like get somebody to listen to like more than what they know. In my opinion, there is no Bon Jovi music that's going to make you quote, see the light. Like you're not going to be like, oh, I hated Bon Jovi, but you played the song for me that changed my mind. Like Bon Jovi does Bon Jovi things on. Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. Having said that, if you're a Bon Jovi fan, this is Bon Jovi doing things the best they do it, in my opinion.
Right.
So I love that song. And then the other two things that I've had stuck in my head was I was a huge White Stripes fan when they broke and then all through their career. And then when Jack went solo, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like Jack on his own. And then, man, other than his third record, nearly everything he's touched, I just absolutely adore. So I almost went through like a White Stripes drought of sorts. Like I just kind of always focused on Jack's solo stuff and really fell off from like a lot of the White Stripes stuff that I love.
Wow.
And yeah, it was, I didn't become like adverse to it. I just, if I was listening to, if it was like, if I'm going to hear Jack's voice, I might as well just hear the solo stuff that I love so much, because there's a lot more diversity over his solo career than there is with the Stripes. But we just saw him in concert a couple weeks ago. And of course he dusted off a lot of the White Stripes numbers,
right.
Because of that, I have been listening to Hello Operator and Ball and a Biscuit quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And Hello Operator is one of my favorite White Stripes songs. And it's one that, again, because I've been so focused on Jack's solo material that I kind of like forgot's a strong word, but it's just never come up. Right.
Right.
And then Ball and a Biscuit. I think if you're looking for a modern blues song, I think that's one of the best that's come out in the past, I don't know, however long it's been out, 20 years or so.
Right. I have to give that a re-listen.
Yeah, man. And there's really you can go on YouTube and find like, I don't know, 35 live versions of it. There really doesn't exist a bad version of it out there. But if you go find any live version, whether it's, if you find a live version with the Stripes or with any lineup Jack's had in his solo band, I mean, it's always a ripping version of the song. Right. So yeah, so give that one a re-listen. It's quite a jam. So those are our jammy jams. And we had quite a bit of diversity between both of us, I think, which is great. You have a lot of different stuff that everybody can listen to. Those songs will be on our playlist as they always are. So make sure to subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast playlist on Spotify, and you can listen to all these songs that we have talked about and the full album that we're going to be reviewing in the second half. Speaking of the second half, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dayton and I are going to talk extensively about a record we have not heard anything from by this artist until we sat down to discuss, to listen to this record for review. We're going to review The Suburbs by the Arcade Fire coming up in the second half. You're listening to the Infectious Groove Podcast on the Odd Pods Media Network.
Hi, I'm Sam.
I'm Richie.
I'm Little Matt.
And here in the 500 Section Lounge, we are three dads who host a family-friendly weekly podcast.
Yep, we laugh, we go on tangents, and we talk to great guests.
Tangents? I don't know what you're talking about with that. There are gases leaking?
All right, okay.
Yeah, we have legendary conversations from sports to history and everything in between.
So be on the lookout for what we do next.
And always be there to
grab a listen.
Hi, I'm Tina Jaramillo.
And I'm Hillary Doherty.
And we host the Muck Podcast, where we discuss the dark and sometimes weird true stories in American politics.
Hey, Tina, did you know that Elvis crashed the Nixon White House for the sole purpose of getting a DEA badge? And it worked?
What? Or how a gun control advocate senator out of California engaged in gun trafficking with notorious gang leader Shrimp Boy?
Shrimp Boy, I remember him. Okay, so, we cover all of that and more from maladies, madness, mischief, and murder in U.S. politics.
And we also host a bi-weekly interview segment called Lil Muck.
We interview politicians, journalists, activists, and others who share their experiences in politics.
Find the Muck Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out on social media at the Muck Podcast.
Welcome back. My name is Russ from the Infectious Groove Podcast. Along with me for the ride this week is our friend Dayton from the Docking Bay 77 podcast. And if you missed the first half of the show somehow, go back and check out his Jammy Jams and our discussion and feedback and all the things that we do in the first half of the show. When we get into the second half of the show this week, we are going to do an album review together, and this is going to be unique in so many ways, not the least of which is the fact that in the first half of the show, Dayton and I were discussing the fact that both of us very much knew of the Arcade Fire, and somehow, with as much music as the two of us listen to, have never had this band cross our earlobes, which is crazy. So
right.
We are thankful that we were told to listen to this record in order to review it for the show. And I always try to reach out to whomever picks the album for review to get kind of a reason why it is they wanted us, why they like the record, or why they want our take on it, and so forth. So our friend Garrett from the Ever Trending Story podcast picked this album for us to listen to. And here's what he had to say regarding why. He said, I chose the Suburbs from Arcade Fire for multiple reasons. I'd never heard of the band before, and Google Play had this album on sale for 99 cents. I'm not one to pass on a deal, and I'm glad I didn't. The album was unlike anything I'd heard before. From the first track to the bonus one at the end, each song tells an overreaching story while sounding different from each other. The music was unique, the vocals were soothing, and the band became an instant favorite. I always play this from start to finish, and it's my absolute favorite album of all time. So that is a strong, well-written convicted story about why Garrett wanted us to listen to this record. And for me, I personally did not know what to expect when going into this record at all. I knew of the image of the band, which I'll touch on a little bit later because of the SNL sketch that I saw them in. And that's about it. So I'm going to run through some quick details about the album, just for general knowledge. And then Dayton and I will get into everything we liked, what we didn't like, and so on and so forth. The Arcade Fire put out their record Suburbs, which is their third album. It was released on August 2nd, 2010. The album debuted at number 1 on all of the following charts: the Irish album chart, the UK albums chart, the Billboard 200 chart, the Canadian albums chart, and it won Album of the Year at the Grammys in 2011. And as I was looking all of these facts up, I kept thinking to myself, how did I not hear this?
Right?
How is it that I have not heard a note off of this album? But it's all out there. Those are all facts. There was a deluxe edition of the record released a year after the original came out that features 2 more songs, but they're not just added on. They were songs from the original sessions. Now, I'm not sure what you listened to, Dayton, but I personally went with the original track list on this record. So if you do have thoughts on if you listen to the bonus tracks and you have thoughts, feel free to share them through the discussion. But me personally, I went through the original track listing for the record.
Yeah, that was me too.
Okay. So we covered why it was picked for us. Now let's get into what we liked about the record. I'll go ahead and let you take this off the bat. Did you have any favorite tracks on the record? And if so, which ones were your favorites?
Yeah, I had a few. My actual favorite track is Month of May. It's a solid song all the way through. It has a late 70s, early 80s punk new wave influence for sure. Mm-hmm. It moves. It got my attention right away. And yeah, I have actually probably played that one more than any of the other songs on the record.
Right on. I had a few that I went back to more than a few times. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, I'm really big on opening tracks for records.
Yes.
And
yes,
for me,
I am too.
Not only is the title track is the opener on this, and me coming into this with the only, I don't want to say misconceptions or preconceptions, but only thing I knew of this band was I'd seen what they looked like. And the sound that started that first track is not what I expected them to sound like.
Agreed.
All cards on the table. When we knew we were going to do this record, I thought, how much of a variant of Mumford and Sons is this going to be? And I'm pleasantly surprised in every way that I was wrong.
Right.
So the title track, strong opener, I think, for the record. I think
Yes.
I will put some caution on that, though, and say that comes from a person who was expecting something totally different. So if you know what this band sounds like, you're probably going to be less overcome than I was. Like, you'll be like, yeah, I know. That's what they sound like, you know? So I had that one. I had Modern Man. I liked a great deal. I like Empty Room a great deal.
Yeah, I had Empty Room on my list too. I like that one. A lot of layers. There's actually quite a few songs in here that have a lot of musical layers going on, which the last time I listened to the whole was I was wearing headphones and I could really pick up on the subtle nuances, the different hidden instruments and notes. And I really dug it on that particular track, especially also in Sprawl 2. A lot of great stuff going on in that one. And I agree, the opening track is really cool. I kind of got a Traveling Wilburys feel with that one. I don't know why, but every time it came on, I kind of could almost see them in my head. I don't know. It just was weird, but that kind of had a Traveling Wilburys groove to it. So I think that one stuck out for me the most. And actually, Ready to Start, I thought was a nice follow-up and compliment to the opening track as well. So those are the ones that really stuck in my head.
Right. No, I first of all, I hear you on the Traveling Wilburys thing. I get it. Yeah, and when we get to open discussion, I want to talk a little bit more about the way the tracks are laid out. But I will stop off here and agree with you. I totally think that as well. The last one I wanted to mention was City with No Children. I liked a great deal. All right, go on.
No. I really wanted to like that song. I really did. I liked the sound, but there was something in there. I feel like during the chorus, he says, "I feel like I've been living in a city with no children in it," and I know it's a very minor thing. But the two words "in it" feel forced. Like I kept singing in my head. I'm like, do we really need those? And I got distracted every time that part came on. I liked the rest of the song. Yeah. I like the sound. I like the feel to it. But my brain just kept getting hung up on "in it." Why "in it"? And I would sing along to it and drop the "in it." And I kind of felt like it felt better to me. So apart from that, I did dig that song.
I hear you. As a big lyric guy, I do that too. I nitpick stuff like that. This couldn't be more off subject, but last week one of my jammy jams was Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and his Comets. And that line in the second verse where he says, when the chimes ring 5, 6, and 7, we'll be right in seventh heaven. And he pronounces heaven so far off time to make it fit with the rhyme that song came out in the mid 50s. And I heard it first, I don't know, when I was like 6 or 7, and it's bothered me for the last 35 or 40 years. So
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Totally understand.
So I'm right there with you on that.
All right.
The closest thing we get to being negative about music on this show is we have our playfully titled stinkers section, and we ask if you have stinkers on the record. And I'll take this one off the top. So my immediate answer is none, really. Like there wasn't anything that I felt strong enough about that I was like, oh, do not ever play this song for me again. Or more for me, I do have some stinkers where I am just like, nope, do not ever play that song for me again. And that makes it a stinker. But I also have stinkers where if it's a song that I feel impedes the progress of the record, or it's even a good song on its own, but I don't feel like it belongs on the record, things like that are reasons why I could call something a stinker. So having said that, I didn't have any really by my usual standards. If I was forced to pick a stinker on this record, though, and I believe I'm going to pronounce this correctly, would be Rococo.
That's mine too. That's the only one on here I will skip.
Okay, so give me your reason why, because I have a very specific reason why.
Well, aside from it never really got my attention, but the constant repetition of just the word Rococo it really kind of broke my spirit in a way. I was like, okay, let's just move on, So I will honestly say that one got skipped more than any of the other songs on the record.
So we're real close on that, because for me, a stinker can be something that, a song that could be good on its own or whatever. But if it impedes the progress of the record in any way, sometimes that becomes a stinker for me. And for me on this one, on repeated listens to this record, and we're talking with an intent listen to the album or sitting on my desk playing while I'm just doing spreadsheets and stuff at work or whatever, right? every time, no matter what, in the middle of that song, no matter how I was intently or not intently listening during that song, I would be like, what is happening right now? Am I still listening to the album? Wait, where am I at in the album? You know what I mean? And to me, that impedes the progress, the enjoyment of the progress of the record. Right.
Right. I agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, not a bad song. So like, cause Stinker kind of makes it sound like this is a bad song, you know, and maybe not a bad song, but to me, it detracts from the record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. It just, it takes me out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, again, even if I was intently listening, I was like, wait, what's happening now? That to me causes an issue. Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
As we roll into open discussion of the record, I'm going to touch back on something you mentioned earlier, and that's track listing. Huge thing for me. I know it is for you as well. Record's got to come out swinging. It's got to build. I feel like every song on a record should complement the one before it and what's coming after it. And I feel like everything on this record is really well placed. Like this is a good track listing, in my opinion.
Yeah. I will say that, I have very few complaints about it, and definitely track listing is not one of them. It moves very well. It tells a good story. It does lyrically, it kept me involved, and I was really trying to pay attention to the lyrics. And when I listened to it on Spotify at my computer, I was watching the lyrics and trying to, piece together the stuff I'd missed. But yeah, it tells a good story. It kind of paints a picture. So yeah, it's put together well. I like the way it flows.
So it's funny that you mentioned the story of it, because I read a quote from the leader of the band. You're basically your front man here, who said that this record is neither a love letter or an indictment of the suburbs. It's a letter from the suburbs, which I like a lot. Like, as a long grizzled tenured Roger Waters fan, which is, how I grew up loving lyrics. You grow up on Simon and Garfunkel and Roger Waters, you're going to end up loving lyrics your whole life, right?
Absolutely.
So with Roger Waters, all of his lyrics are an indictment of everything. Whatever he's singing about, he's mad,
Well, yeah.
And he's going to list off for you his problems with that, and I like that. And again, this again, I'm going to call myself on the carpet here. If you were to show me a picture of the Arcade Fire and you say this band wrote an album about the suburbs, then again, I can't make clear enough this is a fault of me. My original thought would have been, oh boy, here come the hipsters going to tell us how deadly and evil the suburbs are, and that's
right.
Not it at all. And they also weren't like, oh, this is why the suburbs are so much better than city living or farm living. It's literally just a guy being like, here's some thoughts from where I live.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Cause it really wasn't pointing a finger. It really wasn't, I didn't feel like I was making a judgment either. It was just kind of, almost like observations, this is what we're seeing. This is how it's going. And, this is the things you see around here. So yeah, it was interesting. I totally get that.
And we rarely get any sort of political on the show, but it does make me harken back to a time where we could just share observations that didn't have to be like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah. Like you used to be able to do that, like just share an opinion and not have it have to be on this side of the fence or you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
So
yeah,
I got that from the record. And then when I read that quote, I was like, oh, do you remember when we used to be able to do that?
Yeah.
So one other thing, and I rarely do this, but with this, because I was so ill-versed in this band going into this, I had to look up a lot more than I usually would. And I came across an interesting quote that I want to get your opinion on. The band themselves described the sound of this record as a mix between Depeche Mode and Neil Young. How do you feel?
I saw that too.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Cause I saw that and I tried to listen to it again with that thought in my head. And
I did the same thing. After I read that quote, I listened again.
I kind of see it and I kind of don't. I guess my issue, and I'll get to one of the few things I don't like. His voice doesn't do it for me. And I don't with the feel of the music and the way the record's put together. I don't feel like his voice is emotional enough to go along with, to give me those emotions I'm supposed to feel.
Right.
Neil Young definitely gives you lots of emotions. There's definitely a lot of feeling in his voice, especially if you look at Old Man. I mean, just whatever. And Depeche Mode, I kind of feel that. But no, that was a hard reach for me. And if that might have been their goal, I just don't hear it.
No, and first of all, you make a great point. That probably was what they were swinging for.
Right.
And I want to say this. Here's what I hear more of, and it goes directly to what you're saying about his voice, because to me, it's more similar to this artist than Neil Young. For me, I hear a lot of the Killers in this.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
You know, whereas Brandon, I love Brandon Flowers. I think Brandon Flowers can write the hell out of a song. I do think oftentimes Brandon Flowers is more emotive than the voice you're hearing on here. But I would, and that, by the way, is not just because the Killers are a far more modern act than Depeche Mode and Neil Young. I'm not saying that as if that's a bad thing. Brandon Flowers has a couple of solo records. His second one, The Desired Effect, is one of my favorite records in the last 20 years. Hot Fuss and several other Killers records, they're just fantastic. So if someone was to say to me, and we'll get into this later, like, would you recommend the record and whatnot? But if somebody was to say to me, okay, now that you've heard that record, give me a short version of what it sounds like, I would describe it as Killers-esque, and as a compliment.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hear that. Because when I was going through it, I'm trying to figure out what they sounded like. And to me, it was kind of hard because I didn't know what to hear, what to expect or anything. I didn't even see pictures of them until after I started doing some research on them. So it was all new to me. And I do like the fact that none of the songs sound alike. I mean, the overall album has a sound, but there's so many different instruments being used and arrangements. And so I do like that. So, and I was afraid you're gonna ask me, what does this sound like? I'm like, I don't know. They're labeled indie rock and alternative, and I think that's a good description. But who they sound like, I'm gonna have to follow your lead and say Killers-esque. You know, a little bit softer though. I kind of feel the stuff I hear from. You know, I do prefer a lot of the songs on here that were a little bit heavier, a little bit more rock. But that's just where I'm grown from. But yeah, I can totally hear the Killers in that now. So. Thank you for helping with that.
Yeah, no problem. So the only other thing I wanted to mention in open discussion, and by all means, bring up whatever you wanted to mention too, is I made an allusion earlier to the Saturday Night Live sketch, which I had seen them in. Now, have you seen the sketch that I'm referring to or no?
I know of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay. The very short version is that SNL was going through one of their rebuilding years where damn near the whole cast was a brand new cast. And so they played one of their game shows that they played, but the game show was that you had to guess if it was a new cast member or a member of the Arcade Fire.
I'll look that up.
Very, very, because this is more a fault of my judgment, but if you look at the Arcade Fire, they have a hipster type look to them, or did at that time. And they were doing funny things in the sketch. Like they had a person from the Arcade Fire and a new cast member. And the contestant would go, I'm not entirely sure. Can you hand them old timey instruments and let me see them that way? So it's
nice.
Yeah. It's a very, very fun. And what's funny is that's like my only exposure to this band prior to this, so I was like, how have I seen that sketch and not heard this band,
Right. The only exposure I had to him was like when I go to the record store and every once in a while I'd see one of the records and I'm like, that was it.
So that's really all I wanted to cover. What did you have as far as did you have any open discussion points, maybe something you Googled I didn't, or something along those lines?
I think we covered most of it. Like I said, I do like the lyrics a lot. And I think they kind of give you things to talk about. Like if you listen to it with somebody else, what did you think about this? So I do like that. I do think lyrics are important, in certain music. And this is definitely a genre that requires intelligence. So like I said before, I like the fact that, there's so many different things going on in the songs and they don't get boring. So that was kind of nice. So overall, I was kind of glad I listened to it.
Right on. We kind of asked this same question in two different ways here. Like, basically, would you pay money out for this? And would you recommend someone else pay money out for this? Whether or not you would. So as far as the question goes of, would you personally buy this record? My answer to that, honestly, is I would buy this record if I was in the record store, and I saw it for, especially with what CDs go for now, cheaper. Like I would buy it to have around the house. And that comes as a surprise to me because, again, my own shortcomings. I went into this with a certain expectation, and it exceeded it. And I would throw it on if I was looking for, like you said earlier, great point about like, yes, it's Killers-esque, but it's softer.
Right.
Like, if I wanted to put something on, but not quite Somebody Told Me, like,
right.
It would be a good record to have around for me. So having said that, would you, if you're in the record store and you see it now, would you buy it?
Would I buy it? Probably not, but I'd listen to it again. Like,
Right.
I'll revisit it. I think it's one of those records that would probably grow on me a little bit more the more time I gave it. I mean, I probably went through it easily 8-10 times over the last 48 hours. But yeah, I think it's one of those records that would have to grow on me.
Right on. Now, as far as would you recommend it? So whether or not you would spend your hard-earned money on it, would you, if somebody said to you, who knows, maybe it's somebody who likes folky music, somebody who likes, the Killers or that type of thing. They came to you and said, hey man, if you heard this record, should I buy it? Like, what would you recommend anybody else buy it?
Yeah, I think if they're a fan of the genre, for sure, it has its own feel, its own sound. So yeah, it's worth checking out. If they didn't buy it, I say definitely stream it and then make up your own mind at that point.
And that was my thing was, yes, I would recommend it, but because again, a lot of this goes back to my shock and awe of how much I personally liked the record. And I think it speaks to enough different tastes in music to where, a lot of people, could come to you and be like, hey man, I'm looking for something new. Oh, well, did you ever check on that record? And a lot of different things people are into, they might find something that they like on this record. So I feel like, let me put it this way. We've reviewed a lot of records on this show that I think are very love or hate, I would be careful recommending the album to many people. And with this, I wouldn't have a problem really passing this out as a recommendation to a lot of different people, because I think there's enough here that would speak to people of many different tastes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, like I said. And it's, there's sometimes you'll put on a record and you'll go, nope. This one, it gives you time to make up your own mind. It didn't hit me right out of the gate. But I will say that more I listened to it, the more I found things in it that I did like. And there's some surprises. So yeah, it's worth listening to. Of course, giving it a chance.
Right on. Now we're going to move on to the segment where the show is famous for one member of this show having given Pet Sounds a 4 out of 10. Pet Sounds being, of course, one of the greatest records ever recorded in the history of music. And the show is unfortunately famous for giving that record a D or less. Having said that, and to clarify for newer listeners, it wasn't me that did that. We do a rating of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. And then we mention why it is that we came up with our rating. Dayton, this is your first time on the show. I will pull you out first and have you tell us what was your number rating and your reasoning behind it.
I ended up giving it a 7. And I think it's because, like I said, the one thing holding me back was his voice. It really didn't work for me overall. There was a couple songs that I really enjoyed it, but overall I kind of felt like it didn't have the emotion in it that I wanted for this kind of music. But overall, there's lots of good musicianship, lots of good songwriting. So 7 out of 10, I think, is fair.
So I kind of, as our discussion evolved, I was like, I think I know where this is going to go. Like I knew you were going to come in like a little bit lower than me, and I gave it an 8 instead of a 7, but for very similar reasons. Okay. So for me, if you have a song that can even be considered a stinker or holds the record back in any, that's almost always like an automatic deduct 1 right there. Right. And then you and I talked about how both of us are like, we listen to music in all sorts of different ways, like it's accessory. We intently listen to it. And for me, and this ties into that same song, but if you have any point on your record where no matter how I listen to it, there's a point where I zone out, I got to pull another number away from you. You know what I mean? Like I got to take another whole one off. But having said that, the rest of the record, I think is way stronger than I expected it to be. And also this probably goes without saying, but I should say at no point when the two of us keep saying this record surprised us, are we surprised that Garrett picked good music. We're not saying
we're not saying that.
No. It's literally our to background with this artist, and I don't know. I didn't know what to expect, but I know I didn't expect exactly what I heard in a good way.
Right.
But, and I didn't even notice when I was listening to it that I think that part of any area that I did zone out is because of exactly what you said. If there was a little more emotion in the lyric, and conversely, again, huge Roger Waters fan here. Like, I'm certain there's plenty of people that don't want to hear Roger Waters wailing at the end of Hey You, or any number of songs where Roger isn't singing in key. I'm sure that turns plenty of other people off. So I get that. Like, I could see someone's attraction to this record being just calm down. Like, it doesn't need to be that emotive. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Right. By the way, I do like him wailing at the end of Hey You. So I'm not one of the people that skips that. So.
As do I. All right. Well, as we always say on these episodes, whether or not we pick the record, and we greatly appreciate everybody listening to what we have to say about any number of albums, we really love it when people bring albums to us. And this is not the first time that I've had to review a record from an artist. Like, at least with this one, I'd heard of the artist. There's many that have come across our desk that I'm like, well, I've never even heard of this artist before, but I like when I'm pleasantly surprised by anything to do with music. And overall, this was such a great experience for me to be pleasantly surprised by an artist who's been in the Air Supply for so long, and I've just never hit play. Yeah,
I think I'll have to check out some more of their stuff. So yeah, I guess it was a positive experience overall.
Right on. Speaking of positive experience, Dayton, thank you so much for coming on the show. And the listeners will never know this, but Dayton and I have been working through some ridiculous technical difficulties through this entire episode that you're at the finish of right now. The dude has been very cool, very calm, very collected, just keeping on. Professional podcaster over here, knows what he's doing and is helping out. So when you hear this episode, it will not sound like it to you, but every couple of, 32 minutes or so, we have not been able to see or hear each other, and we've picked right up and gone from there. But I would argue that if you can have that kind of great discourse like we've had over this, that in the face of all those technical difficulties and everything, I feel like that's the best somebody could ask from a free podcast that all they had to do was push play on their phone to listen to, right?
Right. Agreed. Yes. Thank you for having me on. It's been an awesome pleasure. I appreciate it.
Right on, man. And I always appreciate, I know I say this every time I read any of the feedback, but we always appreciate every time you send us feedback and help on, we're all big One Pig podcasting family on Twitter. We're always all retweeting each other and everything, but I really appreciate it when you send us extra feedback, and, privately and publicly, you've shared plenty with us, about our show, and it means a great deal to us. So before we get out of here, where are people going to listen to your less technically difficulty laden program at?
Well, if whatever you're listening to this podcast on, you can listen to me. We're on everything, Podbean, Good Pods, Spotify, Audible, wherever. And we cover a lot of stuff, anything from the West Side Story to the Muppets to Star Wars to Winger. So we hit a lot of different topics.
You just gave me an idea. I'd love to see the movie The Muppets Take West Side Story.
I would pay money for that.
Absolutely. I would absolutely pay money for that. We need to, I don't know if you want to get at me tomorrow. Let me know about trademarking that, just in case they ever decide to do it. So.
I'll get together a spec script. We're going on it.
Awesome. Having said that, next week on the program, Michelle is going to return to the show. So that's either good news or bad news, depending on how long of a fan of the show you've been. And we are going to have another special guest stop by and share the show with us. And that one's going to be a fun discussion, because we're going to talk about how the concert scene or live events in general have changed since the pandemic. So, I personally have been to shows from a club show all the way up to a stadium show since we're back to live events. And I know that Michelle has, and our guest for next week has as well. So it should be fun sharing our experiences with everything and how that's all going and what we think the future's going to hold for that. So make sure, first things first, if you're listening to us right now, whatever platform you're listening to us on, when this episode is over, go subscribe to the Docking Bay 77 podcast. And then after that, get ready for next Monday when we talk about this whole live event returning situation and how it's affected us and how we think it's going to affect all of us going forward. Thanks for joining us. And as we always say in our shows, without music, life would be a mistake. Bye.
Bye.
The Infectious Groove Podcast is hosted by Russ Robinson, Kyle Wimple, and Michelle Koselecki. Produced and edited by Russ Robinson. Intro and outro music composed by Chris Kimmel. Recorded with a Rode Podcaster Pro and Rode Pod mics.